So, the NBA draft lottery is done and 14 selections have been made. So, today I'm going to be reacting to the first 14 selections and just giving my thoughts on what the prospect could do for the team and how good a pick it is. So, with the first pick, the Minnesota Timberwolves selected Anthony Edwards. Edwards is a wing out of Georgia, mainly a shooting guard, and some of his biggest strengths are his size and his speed and his strength. Just a physical beast. Um, there's also indications that he can be a good scorer from all three levels. Wasn't particularly efficient from three in college while playing at Georgia, but there is signs that he can improve there. And he led the SEC in scoring at 19 points per game as a freshman, so that is pretty impressive. What you could say to critique this pick is, how is he much different from Andrew Wiggins? There was an article that came out where he said, I can't watch basketball, and that if he was drafted in the NFL, he'd play there. So, obviously some concerns with him, but I would say this is a pretty good pick from Minnesota. Just probably in their mind the best available player. Anyways, let's move on to the Golden State Warriors, who had the second pick in the NBA draft, and they selected, to the surprise of very few people, James Wiseman, who is a 7'1" center out of Memphis, though he only played 3 games in college. A very unknown entity. But just great size at 7'1" with a 7'5" wingspan, and he can really be their center for the next 10 years if they want to. Obviously a position of need for them, but there was questions over whether you should be picking a center this early in the draft when you can get one from so cheap in free agency. Like, what can he do that Nerlens Noel can't? There's questions like that you have to think about when you're taking a center near the top of the NBA draft. But the Warriors, they need a center, and this could really help them out. Some of your Warriors news is there was a report that Klay Thompson got injured, and man, I hope it's nothing serious, because we all want to see Klay back on the court, obviously after his ACL tear in last year's finals. So hopefully that's nothing too serious and he'll be ready to play. Anyways, with the third pick, the Charlotte Hornets take, in my mind, the most exciting prospect in this draft, LaMelo Ball. And wow, this is a great pick, I think. I was scared that with him falling to them, they'd say, oh, we already have Rozier, we already have Devontae Graham, but no, they end up taking him, and that's just a huge selection for them. Obviously, just a great playmaker, a great passer. There's questions about his shooting and defense, but there are signs that he can improve there. And if he puts in the effort, he's going to be a really good player. Another thing that I don't feel gets mentioned very much with him is he is a very good rebounder. So he can grab the rebound, which obviously helps you defensively, and then take the ball up the court and be a playmaker in transition. So just a very good pick by the Charlotte Hornets. Okay, with the fourth pick, we got our first shock with the Bulls taking Patrick Williams out of Florida State. A wing, small forward, can maybe play some power forward. 6'8", 225 pounds. Just there is belief that he can be a really good 3-point shooter. He was a good 3-point shooter in college. Hit 84% of his free throws. He's the second youngest player in this draft class. Just a lot of upside with Patrick Williams, that he can be a really good 3-and-D player. But obviously a huge risk, and taking him ahead of guys who are projected to go to the Bulls like Denny Avdia and Tyrese Halliburton. Just, if he doesn't work out, this pick is going to be criticized a lot. Moving on to the fifth pick, where I think we got another little shock with the Cavs taking Isaac Okoro, 6'6", 225 pounds, out of Auburn. just a really versatile player, a really good defender. There's belief that he can be a good shooter, even though he made just 29% of his threes in college. But they're obviously drafting for upside and for positional need, with them already having two guards and two bigs, though what they're going to do with Andre Drummond and Kevin Love remains to be seen. Next, we get to the sixth pick with the Atlanta Hawks, and they took Onyeka Okongwu out of USC, and I'm a huge fan of this pick. In my belief, the best available player for them, and just a player that you can see is going to contribute to winning basketball. Just a really good defender. He's been compared to Bam Adebayo on that end, and then can do everything you want from a center on the offensive end. Can run the floor, and yes, they already have John Collins and Clint Capella, but I believe this is a really good pick because those guys can't play 48 minutes a game, and just bringing in someone who's more on Trae Young's timeline. And I think Trae Young tweeted that he should be ready to catch some lobs. So maybe Lob City 2.0 in Atlanta with him, Trae Young, and John Collins. Next, we get to the seventh pick, which was the Pistons, and another pick that I'm a huge fan of in Killian Hayes from France. I think he was the number one prospect on Kevin O'Connor's board, and 6'5", can play either guard position, though probably more comfortable as a point guard. Can defend, can shoot, can play make. Just seems like a very NBA-ready player who has everything that you need to succeed in the NBA. Questions about his athleticism, but I think he's going to be a really good player for the Pistons, especially since they need someone to build around and a lead guard. Next, we get to the Knicks, who drafted power forward, another power forward. Wow, Obi Toppin. When you think about it, though, it sure makes sense. Obviously, they have team options on Bobby Portis and Julius Randle, and then next coming year. So those guys may very well not be on the roster. And again, someone who's on the timeline of their young guys like R.J. Barrett and Mitchell Robinson. Obi Toppin as a power forward, 6'9", 220 pounds, not a very good defender, which worries you, but offensively can do the lot. He's been compared to Amari Stoudemire if he came up in today's games. Obviously a great finisher inside, can catch lobs, get tip-ins, just a very exciting offensive skill set. But questions about his defense, and he's 1 day younger than Jason Tatum, so already going to be expected to come in and contribute. Next, we go to someone who fell in this draft in Deni Avdija, and he was selected by the Washington Wizards with the 9th pick, and I'm a big fan of this pick. Obviously, wings are something the Wizards needs, as they have Thomas Bryant at the center position, and then their backcourt of John Wall and Bradley Beal. We'll see how good John Wall is coming back, but someone who can play the small forward for them, can be a secondary or third ball handler, can play make a bit. There's questions about his shooting, but there's reason to believe that he can be at least a league average 3-point shooter for them, and I'm a real big fan of this pick. Next, we get to our second shock pick, you could say, with the Phoenix Suns selecting Jalen Smith. I mean, I think selecting Tyrese Halliburton at this pick would have been a great pick, but they ended up going with Jalen Smith, a power forward out of Maryland, 6'10", 225 pounds, 7'2" wingspan, and he made 37% of his three-pointers and 75% of his free throws, so reason to believe that he can be a stretch four, but also someone who can score inside. Problem is, he's not a great perimeter defender, and with more and more wing players playing the four, he could get exposed a bit there. So maybe he'll become a 5 later in his career. But what does it mean about Dario Saric coming back? Because obviously they already have Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges in those positions. So we'll see about that. I think this pick will depend on what they do in the offseason to see their full plan. Obviously, they already traded for Chris Paul. The 10th pick, the Spurs take Devin Vassell, 6'5", 180 pounds, out of Florida State. Just prototypical 3-and-D wing. He averaged 2 steals and 1.3 blocks per 40 minutes. So just a Spurs player is going to be a really good defender, good in transition, going to be a good 3-point shooter. Just a guy who you think is going to be in the NBA for a long time. Next, we get the 12th pick and a guy that I think is going to be a steal in this draft, who's going to be a good player in the NBA for a long time, in Tyrese Haliburton. He's a good shooter, even though his 3-point shot looks a bit funky. A good defender, a good playmaker, someone who could be a primary or secondary ball handler and then shoot the 3 ball and play defense. Everything you need out of a guard in the modern NBA. And it'll be interesting to see, obviously, Bogdanovic backed out of the sign and trade to the Bucks. So is he going to stay in Sacramento or is he going to go somewhere else? It'll be really interesting to see and they have Buddy Hield, who's reportedly unhappy, and De'Aaron Fox. So a lot of guards, but I think they'd be stupid to pass up on him. The 13th pick, the Pelicans got Kira Lewis Jr., and just one of the fastest players in this draft. And then obviously with Zion and Lonzo already on the team, they're going to be a really dangerous team in transition, running the floor. He is quite a light player and has quite a skinny frame at only 6'3" and 165 pounds. So that's obviously a concern. But if he can be a good shooter, good in transition because of his speed, I think he could be a really good player for the Pelicans, but sort of a wait and see. And then finally, with the 14th pick in the draft, the Boston Celtics selected Aaron Nesmith, 6'6", 213 pounds, out of Vanderbilt, and just a really good 3-point shooter. And that's something every NBA team could use, just more shooting. So 83% free throw shooter, just almost a 7-foot wingspan. So there is reason to believe that he can become a good defender, and then obviously just a really good shooter. And then finally we got one more pick, which is Cole Anthony to the Magic, and I think this is a good pick for them. Just a confident scorer and shooter. That's what the Magic has been crying out for these last few years. So I think a good situation for him, and for them, the Magic. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys.